Hi guys, I am Yuvraj Sinha, working in TGX Software Solution as a MuleSoft developer. So today we want to see how to implement OpenAPI specification. So what is OpenAPI specification? The OpenAPI specification or OS is a standard format for defining RESTful APIs in a way that is both human readable and machine readable. It enables developer to document API endpoints, request response format, authentication, and more using JSON or YAML. OS simplifies API integration by providing tools for auto-generating documentation, SDKs, and testing and improving consistency and usability. So let's see what we are going to implement today. So we are going to implement two endpoints having first resource path is employees and second one is employees with a path parameter. Then there are two methods in the employees, get and post. In get, we have one correlation ID, which is a header parameter, from date to date, which is a query parameter. Post, it is having correlation ID, this is a header parameter, this is also a header parameter, and this is a path parameter or a URI parameter. So now let's jump to Design Center and let's create a new API specification. Let's give it a name as employee data. We're going to choose OS 3.0 and YAML and click on create API. So now we get a template where we have info. This info section gives a information about the specification we are creating. So first we have by default given version and title. Now we are going to add some more information. I'm going to add contact. Now email. I'm going to give an email yuvraj@tgh.com. Then name Yuvraj. Then URL https://www.tgh.com/contact. So now I'm going to give a description. The description, it is to describe what the API does. The description will be this is an API which fetches and creates employee in data. Now I'm going to give a licenses. So what is licenses? If this API is licensed under some body, if the data should be mentioned under the licenses tag. So let's give a name. Let's assume it is licensed under TGH, and we need to give the URL. So let's give the URL demo URL, dumb URL. License. Now terms of service. So now here also we can provide the URL for terms of service. We want to give T and C. So now we have defined the info, giving the information about the API. Now we're going to define the paths. So let's just jump into paths. We're going to define some resource paths, what we have seen in the slides. So now the first resource path is employees. So now I'm going to give a description. So let's give a description of this. And fetch employee data or details. Now we're going to define the methods. Get. So let's give a description to this. This method used to fetch multiple employee data. details. Now we are going to define the response. So get method doesn't have a request body. So we can directly define the response. I'm going to write the responses tag. Under that, I'm going to just give a 200 response. It will be a definition of a success response. Under that, we need to give description. So description is a mandatory tag under these responses when we are defining. If we don't define it, it's going to throw an error. Now let's define content. Under content, it should be application JSON or whatever type you want can define. Now let's define a schema. Now we can define the schema over here, but as we are going to reuse the schema again and again, so we are going to define under components. So under components, we can define reusable codes where we can reuse them in the specification again and again. So we're going to define components under this schemas. Now we are going to write employees. We're going to give a name of the schema. We're going to give employee. As I'm going to define as an object, it's going to be a JSON object. I'm going to do the type object, then properties. Then I'm going to give the source property as ID and type as number, then example as 101, then name type as string, then example Yuvraj, then designation. So we have defined it. So now let's refer it over here. So in order to refer that, we are going to use $ref. $ref is used to refer any components or any external references. So we're going to use the suggestion. To use the suggestion tab, we can press into Control tab. You can get suggestion. Now it is referring to this schema. Now let's try it out. So you can see the response. But as we are fetching multiple employee details, it is coming as a single. So now we need to change it into an array or a JSON array. So now we are going to refer this one into another schema. We're going to define another schema as employees. Under that, we're going to give type as array. Now we are going to give items. Then again, we're going to use $ref and then employee. Now we are going to refer it here as employees. Now let's see again. You can see the response is in an array. Now let's define the another method, that is the post method. We are going to define post. Here we're going to give the description, that is this method is used to create employee details. Employee details. So now next we are going to give a request body. As this is a post method, we are going to define a request body. So now we need to define the content, and as we have defined it in the reusable section, we need to first define the line type, which type it will be application JSON, then schema, then $ref. We are going to refer that employee. Now we need to define the response. This is the error is it's showing because we haven't defined any response. When we define response, it will into the error is going to be removed. Now let's define another response 01. Description. Description is mandatory. Is the success response. Now content, it will be application JSON and schema. Now we are going to give a simple message that your data is successfully inserted. Employee data successfully inserted. Now let's check it out. The post method. You can see the success response. So now let's define the next resource path, which is employees with the path parameter. So now let's give a description. This is to fetch single employee details. Now let's define the get method and give a description to it. This is to fetch now let's define the parameters. We need to define the path parameters, but I'm going to define it in the components as we are going to use it. So let's define it over here as parameters. It is defined under the parameters tab. So now we need to give the name of the parameter, that is path param. Let's give it a name as that. Then in here we are going to, you can choose which type of parameter it is. We are going to choose it is a path parameter. I'm going to give the name is ID, because here the name is ID, and we are going to give required as true and example as 101. Now in schema we are going to define type as string. Okay, here it is defined. Now let's refer using $ref suggestions. Here it is showing components parameters path parameters. So using $ref we can refer and click it over here. Now we need to define the response. Here the response will be success response. We need to give the description. It is mandatory. Response. Now we need to define the content. Content will be application JSON schema, and then $ref employee. Now let's try this endpoint out. Fine. So we see a success response. So now we are going to define the header parameters and the query parameters. So under the parameters only, I'm going to define as a first the correlation ID, which will be a header parameter. Head. So here I'm going to give in here it should be a header. Then name it should be X correlation ID. Maybe then required should be true. Now schema should be, I need to give a schema type should be string. So now we have created correlation ID. Now let's create query parameters. So to create query parameters, first we are going to define a in the parameters that form date. Let's give a name as that. Then in, we're going to give query and then name as form date. Then schema as type and string. So I'm not going to make it a required field. It's going to be a normal. Then send it or not send it. Now we're going to define toDate. In query name toDate. Schema type string. So now we need to refer these in the parameter section of each place. We're going to refer the correlation header. In each place, we're going to give correlation header. In the post section, we're going to define the parameters, then $ref correlation ID, correlation header. And now in the employees get also, we need to define the parameters. We want to define ref correlation header, then again hyphen $ref. We can define it over here like this. So let's copy it. We are going to give form date, include it. Include form date, include it. So now we have added the path parameters and all the other parameters, required parameters we will add it. We have added in the methods. Now let's test it out. Now let's check. Let's try this out. The query parameters are added. Population ID is added. Let's check it. Send it. It's a success. Now we can see we have the validation again. Let's check the other methods. Here also population ID is added and maybe population ID is added. So you can see like this way. This is how to implement the path parameters, query parameters, header parameters, methods, different methods like get, post, and their request responses. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the second part. For more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel and like, share, and comment. Thank you.